want to solve the waterlogging problem in Gurgaon, and it's been discussed, and then they come up with a approach. Now they want to pass a bill telling, say, there is certain amount of water that people can use, or there has to be more drains that has to be created. So whatever is the approach, that has to be accepted at the Vidhan Sabha in the state, and that is where the policy acceptance, the fourth place comes. That is only on paper. But as we all know, in the social sector, nothing will move before we have funds for doing it. So the fifth step, that is provisioning of means, is allocating budget to it. In the for the union government, it happens on the 1st of February, but on states, they have different dates where we come to know how much budget is allocated for different areas of interest. And we then come to know that, okay, what is the budget that is allocated to solving the drainage problem in Gurgaon. Now, often there is, say, you might give a budget of, say, 100 crores to solve this problem, but in the first year, the budget allocated is only, say, 5 crores. So often you cannot do substantial things because adequate budget or funds are not allocated. And once budget is allocated, then you go down to the implementation of it, which is the seventh step, and then the evaluation part of it. And this is basically the cycle that follows for policy making for any government entity. And if you're in the social sector, you might be working or you might be working on these similar steps. In some of the cases, you might merge 2 or 3 steps together because that's more convenient for the use case that you're working in. But this is the usual steps that you follow. Now, in all of this thing that I talked about, this is the normal process. Now, what you can always do is that you can have data in each step of the process and try and understand whether the decision that you're taking is a good decision or not. So if the policy discussion is happening, you can go to stakeholders, you can do a pilot, small pilot, and see the 2 or 3 approaches that you're talking about. Is there approaches giving some results or not? So, or you can, when you're forming the policy, you can get some feedback from the citizens on those things. So what we are talking about is, say, instead of the evaluation at the end, which can often be after, say, 2 years or 5 years, you can always they do some evaluation in the process, and that actually helps you make things in a proper manner. Why we talk about this? Because, as you know, all of you are in the social sector and you work with governments. A person stays in a government position for roughly about 2 to 3 years, and often if you are looking at something, say the problem that is identified today as the waterlogging problem in Gurgaon, and we are trying to solve it, by the time it is implemented, it's another 5 or 6 years. That's very much real. Then what will happen? The person who has implemented it will tell that whatever was passed in the policy was passed 5 years back. I don't have a say in that. So it is wrong, but we just passes on the buck to the predecessor. And this is very common in the government parlance. So this is one of the problems that was identified by Niti Aayog when I joined Niti Aayog in 2016. I was there for 3 years, 2016 to 2019, heading the data analysis. This was a major problem that was identified, that people are moving from one position to another and they're passing on the buck to their predecessor, the previous person, the previous to previous person. So what Niti Aayog thought about the way to solve it? And this is a very simple thing that what Niti Aayog did, and all of you will know about it. They started by ranking and indexing the states. Why this is so important? Health. Now let us take the example of health. Now I'm talking about this in the context of 2016 and 17 when I was there and we are developing the health index. So if you see, at that point in time, we have a national family and health survey, which was done in 2004 and 5, and then again done in 2015 and 16. So it just came out in 2017. It came out just about a year later of when we were working on the health indices. So you come to know about the status of health in a state and district only after a gap of 10 years. So now think, what will be the responsibility, what will be the liability of the district health officer, the principal secretary health, the health minister? Usko to pata hai ki I will not be evaluated till the next 10 years. By 10 years, I have retired, I have gone. So anything I do right or wrong, it really doesn't matter. So having that continuous evaluation is very important. So what Niti Aayog did was that come up with a health index ranking the states on a yearly basis. And this was very much targeted at the administration. And we are not looking at things which are like geography specific. We are looking at factors which were administrative specific. So let me give you an example. So if there was a certain medicines that had finished in a hospital, how long did it take to replenish the medicine, to refill the medicine? Did it take 1 month, or did it take 1 day or a week? This is something which is administrative. This has nothing to do with the environment or other thing. So these are very much in the control of the government officers. So what helped was that we could help people liable for the health outcome of the people in the district and the states. So this was one of the first indices that we started working on, the health indices. The second that we worked on was education, school level education. Education also, we now have NAS, but NAS also started around the same time. Till that time, there was only that the evaluation from Pratham, but Pratham evaluation, Acer, was a non-government evaluation. So the government wanted to also have some evaluation of education. Again, education outcomes was one of the things, but also education infrastructure. How is the infrastructure been managed? So we did one index on the education part also. Third was water. Water is very, very important, as you will understand. It's not just the excess of water that Jyoti ma'am talked about. It's also a shortage of water, which is very crucial for the country, because water is the lifeline of India. We have close to 50 to 60% of our population dependent on agriculture. And without water through irrigation, this will be very difficult. So when we are talking about water management, we are not trying to compare a Rajasthan with a UP. We know that Rajasthan has much lesser amount of access to water as compared to UP, where we have the Ganga and the Yamuna going through. It's not about what you have. It's about whatever you have, how well are you managing it? Do you have irrigation in place? Are you doing drip irrigation? Are you educating the farmers to not to waste water? So it's all administrative and something that an officer could do. So water management was very crucial. So the third index that we came up with was water management. And then the Brigadier Kapoor talked about the Sustainable Development Goal. So SDG index was one of the things that we talked about, because India at a national level has to report on how we are doing on the SDGs. But India cannot achieve SDGs at a good level till the time the states are doing it. So we started with this in around the 2019, when the first SDG index, India SDG index, came up. And then now about 7-8 states have extended it to district SDG index, where the states want to go the step further and they want to evaluate their own districts about how the districts are doing on attaining SDGs. Himachal, Kerala, Karnataka, some of the states are doing that. And so this is about percolating from the national level to the state level, and now states are taking up in improving that. Innovation is very important factor, and that's also we came up with this. So at the India level, we are evaluated on the Global Innovation Index, the GII, where India's innovation is measured. India can innovate only if the states are doing well. So we devised an India Innovation Index, where we measured the innovation output and the potential of each of the state. And this has been there in the last 4 or 5 years. And states are basically taking a very important step in doing that. Export readiness. Export readiness is very focused on the coastline states, because export is only something which, if you have a sea coast, you can do that. So because export currently is very heavily dependent on Gujarat, but we have a huge coastline all across India, the southern part. We can actually export from all of these places. We need to have good connectivity to these places, so that goods prepared, manufactured in rest of India can reach these ports, and we are not dependent just on Gujarat, but we can export it across various things. So export readiness was also one of the studies that we did. So you can see a lot of these indices are very simple. If you see, they are exactly the type of thing that Brigadier Kapoor was talking about. Collecting data and measuring them. The very first step, we are not talking about anything complex like predictive analytics, artificial intelligence. I will go on to some of them later, but this is just simply collecting them, putting the data in an Excel file, and measuring, doing a weighted average. I think weighted average, Bappa can do it. Basically, you have like 10 columns. You basically decide like column 1 should have 50% weightage, column 2 have 10%. It's basically depending on what are the things you give weightage on. So you basically do a simple weighted average and decide how the state is doing. So very important that this was there. Basically, it was also a brainchild of Amitabh Kant, who recently moved on. So he started the ease of doing business ranking when he was in DPIIT, and DPIIT was his last role before he moved to Niti Aayog. And he basically bought in that concept of measuring states. He believed in competitive federalism. And we also talked about cooperative federalism. That's what is there in the vision of Niti Aayog is. But I think Amitabh Kant personally believed in competitive federalism, and all this into this. I might have done the ground level maths and the number part of it, but these are all his vision, and he drove all these things as when we were in Niti Aayog. These are at state level, but often we see that just measuring at a state level is not enough, and we have to go much below, because at a whole, a state might be doing quite well, but we have to measure a district. And district is where some of the districts are lagging behind. If you see Uttar Pradesh, as a whole, Uttar Pradesh is doing quite well, but there are certain districts in UP which are lagging behind. They are the worst, like Brigadier Kapoor mentioned about the aspirational district. Aspirational districts is one such program where we look at the 112 most bottommost district in the country out of the 720, and a focused 5 to 6 years program on how those aspirational districts can be improved. District hospitals, again, each district has a district hospital, measuring what is the so you can see above we are measuring the state on a health outcome. Here we are measuring the districts on how the districts are doing on their health outcome, and basically managing the health ecosystem. And that is very important. There are certain things that are there in your hand. If the oxygen cylinder is out, you need to refill it. You need to order it. So these are very administrative aspects. So we wanted to have the officers responsible for what they are doing. Municipal and civic bodies are very important because as urbanization is growing, they are in charge of collecting the money and also maintaining them. So how municipal and civic bodies are doing are important things. So the bottom three are district level measurement of that we're doing. Aspirational districts is one example that Niti Aayog really drove. And if you see in aspirational district, this is aspirational district dashboard. The previous chart that you had was measuring the states, and at the bottom the districts on a yearly basis. Now, is yearly good enough? So we already moved from say 10-year NFHS to yearly, 10-year to 1 year. Is 1 year good enough, or we need to go more? We use the term called big data. I think Professor Bappa might touch upon it. When you talk about big data, we are talking about humongous amounts of data being generated every millisecond or microsecond. We have access to data, but are we reading them? Are we analyzing them? So the aspirational districts program basically was a step towards that. We were measuring the districts on a monthly basis. So we are moving from yearly to monthly. You might think very simple things that we have done, but it's the first time in the Indian context that you look into some of these things. Like there are 7 pillars that were there: health and nutrition, education, agriculture and water resources, financial inclusion, skill development, and basic infrastructure. So some of them are 2, like this has 2, and we are looking at say a district called Dhubri here, and this is in public domain. This is championsofchange.org or .in. I'm forgetting that website. So you have this data on a month by month basis, where you see how this district has done from the previous month. In December 2018, it was there. January 2019, it has moved from here to there. So how the districts has moved on a monthly basis. How the composite score has moved last month. How the delta ranking has changed this month. And it was not about giving them these marks and ending it there. If something was going down, so people who know about the aspirational districts program, it's like a flagship program of the Indian government. Prime Minister has also mentioned about it several times. Each district has a Prabhari officer who was a senior IAS officer based in Delhi. So that IAS officer will try to understand what are the challenges that district is facing and try to help in mitigating those challenges. I think that aspect is also required. Data is just a means for understanding the problem or understanding the causes, but we also shouldn't stop at data. After data, that action is required, and often that human part is very important. And you in the social sector, you play a very important role, because the people like me, Bappa, we are primarily in the institute, sitting in Delhi or some city and analyzing the data. But I think you also need to communicate these insights to the people on the ground and tell that how this impacts them. How this impacts them, it's tell them, and what action they can take to impact them. That is very important for closing the loop. Otherwise, many people might not be able to relate to data. Converting the data into an actionable intelligence is very important for people at the ground level. Measuring things at a monthly level is not a new concept in India, and Chandrababu Naidu is now the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh. But when Andhra was combined, at that time he has started the CM dashboard, I think way back in 2011-12, and this is a screenshot from that time which I still have, when his picture was there, because he was the first person who started this monthly monitoring of data. And these were, some of these data points were very simple. How much rainfall happened there? If you had street lights, like, see, how many street lights are there and how many street lights were on the last night? Very simple. But the moment you put this data in the public domain, people like me and you can see this data. Journalists can see that, okay, there is so and so street in Hyderabad where the street lights didn't switch on the last evening. So we need to take some action. We need to tell the officer in charge to do something. So putting the data, what Chandrababu Naidu did was just simple thing. He started with about 30 data points, and now this portal is still active. They have close to about 500 data points now. It's over the 10 years, it has increased. Simple thing. Measuring an administrative data, putting it in the public domain, increases transparency. The officer in charge is aware and is on his or her toes that I need to work because people are watching me. And he also used to take some of the data points on a monthly basis and have discussion in house about how things could be improved. But that was a closed door discussion that he and his team would do. So this was something commendable that was done. So first, measuring data. Start with the first step, just putting it on a dashboard and seeing it. Don't try to look into predictive analytics or AI as a first step, because you will get lost. Starting with simple gives you confidence, gives you understanding of the data, and lets you do a lot of things. Just by looking at the data, you can uncover a lot of stuff which you didn't know before. So this is the first good step that you follow. Now I'll move to big data, where I was talking about high volume of data. And I'll go to one of the use cases from Kedarnath in 2013. Since then, we have a movie also on this. So people will be aware of this avalanche that took place 12 years back. So when this event took place, thousands of people were stranded in that place. And there were hundreds of rescue organizers who are doing their rescue work. A lot of people from the army were involved, a lot of NGOs were involved in the rescue. But one of the questions that was there in the mind, how many people are stranded inside and how many people have we rescued? Matlab, total target kya hai and how much of the target have we achieved? Given it was a calamity and disaster prone zone, you couldn't go and count the number of people. How many people are there now? Let me go and count them. Like we do in traditional surveys, we go house to house. Like next year, the census will take place. People will come into your house and measure and count the number of kids you have, count the number of cars you have. So that option was not there of counting. We are not at the liberty. We are sort of in a war zone or a disaster zone. So what was the technique that was used for this getting this number? At that point in time, these were the telecom operators in India operating in 2013. So we took the data of all the telecom operators, from all the telecom operators to any of the mobile phone numbers that connected to any of the base towers 24 hours before the incident. So that means they were in the affected zone. This gave us the master list of people who might be in that place. Now, in that one day, some had already might have gone out before the disaster took place, but we took that as a master list, and then we tracked the location of the mobile phone outside that zone, and there was a big call center set up to monitor, to call the people once the mobile phone became active and ask them if they have gone to a safe place. And it was also possible that out of a family of 4 or 5 people, only one people had a mobile. It was a pre-geo era, if you also remember, so mobile penetration was also a bit less at that time. So call them because they might be family members. So this was a technique that was used to get a sense. Now you can see the power of data. Uh, there was no other way at that point in a disaster-prone zone to understand the master list of all the people who might possibly be there in that area. So using mobile phone data, and this is where the big data comes in, big data and AI comes in. You can do actually a lot of this stuff which are otherwise not possible with traditional data sources. Property tax. This was another work that was done by the Chief Economic Advisor's Office, and it was released in the Economic Survey of 2017-18. So we have so municipalities and have to collect property tax. Now, in a particular area, there might be 100 of houses that pay property tax, but 100 of houses are paid property tax. But are there 100 houses? Or are there 150 houses, or are there 200 houses? How do we get to know what was the total number of houses in that area and how many are paying their tax? So this is a question that is there. Now, how do you get it? Either you use the traditional means where someone goes here door to door and looks at all the houses in that area, but that will be a very tedious activity, and its number of houses also might keep changing every few months. So satellite image was used to look at the area, and if it was a high rise, estimate the size of the high rise. So they got a very good estimate on the total number of houses that should be paying property tax in that area. And then they had a street and area wise breakup on number of houses that were actually paying property tax and the total number of houses that should pay property tax. And based on that, they could get a sense of how each area was doing, so they could take action done. So this was a pilot that was done in Bangalore and Jaipur, and since then, several of the smart cities has picked it up and implemented them in their in under their banner. So now let's come to agriculture. I'll talk about some of the use cases. Agriculture is one of the domain which is very complex. देख के simple लगता है. हम लोग से we just go to the supermarket, we buy the vegetables, come home, cook it and eat it. We don't understand what goes behind the walls in producing the food. So it's a very complex thing. It's very important for the food security of the country. You might remember, I think some of us might remember, we went through the food shortage during immediately after independence in the 60s and 70s, where we had to rely on foreign powers to give us rice and wheat. So that was a very bad phase because we are buying our food at very high prices. That led to the Green Revolution. So now we have excess of food that is there, and food security is very important. If you have a population of 1.4 billion, whether they do anything else or the other, they need to eat there. So food security is very important. As input, fertilizers and seeds are very crucial component that goes into it. Water, not every field get access through the rainwater. So irrigation into the fields is very important, and efficient irrigation techniques can ensure that that people are getting proper water, and water is not wasted in the process. Electricity for pumping out water and for running the tractor and diesel is very crucial thing. Transport and warehouses play a very important role. Like say, all of us consume rice and roti all through the year, but if you know that rice is grown 3 months in a year and wheat is grown 3 months in a year, but our consumption pattern is not that we eat rice 3 months, roti 3 months, and then other months we just eat berries and vegetables. We tend to eat the same thing across the whole year. To maintain that, Food Corporation of India has humongous warehouses where this food is stored when they are produced and is made available as per the demand. And transport is also a very important factor. It becomes very important when you are growing vegetables and quickly perishable items. If your farm is nearer to the market, you can send those items fresh as compared to if your farm is like say 5 hours away from the highway. So this transport also plays a very important role. For all of these people, the farmers need money, need profit out of all of these. Weather plays a very important role. Satellites and drones are used now to monitor farms, and communication is a very important thing. So we are talking about an early warning and communication system so that we can give advice to the farmers on what's the best thing to do in the current scenario. So the farmer who is growing, say, cotton, when should the farmer sow the crop? When the farmer is growing wheat, when should the farmer sow the crop? Monitoring what is the condition of the crop and harvesting it on time. If you know that your crop is cotton, and there's a thunderstorm expected in the next 3 days, if you don't actually harvest the cotton now, everything will get wasted in the thunderstorm or the strong winds. So just maybe a difference of 1 or 2 days can determine whether the farmers that year is a successful year or is the challenging or a failure year. So intelligent sowing and harvesting is something that the Indian government has been experimenting for the long time. ICRISAT, which is the research of the agriculture sector, has done several pilots with Microsoft in 2015 and 16. So basically, they took in the first year they took 500 farmers. Some farmers were not given any advisory, and some were given advisory, and they saw the difference in the yield of the farmers who took the advisory versus who did not take. And there was a 30% increase in yield. In 2015, they took 500 farmers. 2016, they repeated the same thing with 5,000 farmers as they were increasing their width of the coverage, and it was shown to be successful. And then several states has now taken it up. One of the first states that has implemented this is the Andhra Pradesh. So basically, they have built an system for crop management there, and you can see there are various modules in this crop management. There is a crop planning and estimation. Date of sowing advisory. Date of sowing advisory is very simple thing. It tells you when is the best time to sow your crop. Monitoring for pests and diseases from the sky and using the drones. So if your plant is infested by a disease, then you can monitor it from a drone and you can send advice. Sorry for that. Just switch off my AC. Yes, understanding the soil moisture, and then fertilizer management, drought detection, and other things. So each of them is a different module, and this is where the AI comes in. We are looking at data. We are taking data as an input, and we are trying to predict something like predicting the date of sowing, predicting whether by looking at the image, trying to predict whether your crop is infested with any diseases or not. So the first one is the sowing advisory. Very important. You take 4 inputs, the crop specific weather requirement. So the recommendation is very different if you are growing cotton versus you are growing wheat versus growing rice, or you are growing tomatoes. The recommendations are specific to your crop, specific to your soil type, soil moisture, and weather forecast. This is where the AI takes place and the recommendations come here. But it is very important that the recommendation reaches the ground. It is very important that you know the land parcel that is there, and the recommendation goes to the farmer, particularly in the local language. So this is a SMS that goes in Telugu to the farmer about what the farmer should do. I think that last mile connectivity and delivery of the recommendation is very, very important. Otherwise, all these things doesn't make any sense. So the next one.
Actually, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We also wanted to leave a bit of time for question answers in case.
Yes, sure. So let me just stop at the agriculture. I'll just finish the next 2-3 slides and stop there. Okay. So the next one is the soil moisture. You also need to ensure that the soil has proper moisture content. Again, looking at this and giving recommendation to the farmer, telling very specifically, you need to do something in the next 10 days, or you don't need to do anything in the next 10 days. The recommendations of AI and data science should be very simple. You shouldn't confuse the farmer with a lot of complex maths and stats. The third is the pest disease stress that was there. Whether your crop has disease and pest, or it doesn't have anything. So AgNest is one company. When we look into crop quality, it's a very subjective thing. So what this company AgNext is doing, it is looking at images and giving an quantitative criteria about how your crop and produces, and that can be used when you go to the mandi to auction it and sell it. This has got a lot of success in Europe and Africa, where there is large conglomerates producing and procuring the crops. So I will just stop here. So I had other healthcare sector, but I will stop here at this point. I think, thanks so much. I think I went over time. Sorry for that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarkar. So from the participants, in case you have any questions, we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. So you can either raise your hand, you can type it into the chat box, whatever it is. So Megha, so can somebody unmute Megha, please? Megha, you're not very audible. Sorry. Would you like to type it into the chat box, because your voice is breaking up? Sorry.
Yes, you can type it in the chat, please.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, please, huh? Okay. Somebody else also will raise their hand again.
Hi.
Lakshit and Megha have raised their hands. Or if you could, Lakshit, hi.
Hi.
Please go.
So I want to understand, so it is for social impact, and none of the topics have been touched on social impact. So healthcare was the one of the topic I was looking at. Agriculture is mostly to the small farmers. Then irrigation is to the government or municipalities, the water logging, water system. And then there was one of it, Love Chandrababu Naidu, was nice. But healthcare is the best social impact example. So if you can just show the slides of healthcare, not explain it.
So I think in the positive of time, see, we are doing very similar things in healthcare also. So I jokingly take the example that healthcare and agriculture are very similar. In one case, the subjects can talk, humans can talk, so they can go to the doctor, talk about their pain. And another thing, in the other case, vegetables and crops cannot talk, but they go through the same cycle. They also get pain, they also get infested. We have to monitor them, and we have to be more careful about those things. So basically, it's a simple thing. We basically try to understand the symptoms using AI and take proactive action. India has a large dependence on the tertiary healthcare because a lot of the detection doesn't happen in the early stages, which creates the dual problem. One is that given your disease is not detected in the early stages, there are lesser chances of recovery, but it also increases the cost, the expenditure that you are doing on the healthcare. So both of these creates that challenge. So to mitigate this challenge, what the Indian government is doing is that there are various early detection programs that are coming. So say some people are coming to the hospitals, they are doing a very simple test and trying to understand whether they have diabetic retinopathy or not, trying to understand how their heart condition, cardiac condition is. So these are some of the early things that are being done to ensure that people are detected early. And if you're detected early, then just simple medication or some lifestyle changes can help in taking the appropriate action. So that's the crux of
Thank
most
you.
of
Thank
things.
you for that. Lakshit, I want to say one thing here that
what you've been given a flavor of in the last 1 hour is actually just surfing the top, right? It tells you the applications, the how and how it changes outcomes and creates impacts. There are different case studies through examples that will be told to the people who would attend the 3-day program. You'd appreciate that in the restricted time, you cannot delve deep into the subject. So the subject matter expert with his experience in Niti Ayog, etc., has actually given you the range and the scope, and you can infer from it what is the application, which will be told in detail in the 3-day
Correct.
program.
So there was
Thank
one
you.
more slide of the delta score, and in delta score I had of Assam district, I could see the infrastructure was at 78% and their rank was 4. But although their other education and health was very low, so how could then the infrastructure rank was too high? So what was the basic parameters for you to identify this data?
Yes, so that's a very interesting point that you talked about. Is that, as I told you, it's a weighted average. It's a weighted scoring that we're doing. So I don't exactly remember, but if you go to the aspirational district website, you will get, so not each of the 7 pillars are equal weight. I think some of the pillars had lesser weight. I think infrastructure was very less weight. I think 5% of overall weight was on infrastructure, because infrastructure is a slow moving thing. Some of these things are fast moving, like healthcare outcome, agriculture outcome are fast moving things. But if you have to develop an infrastructure in a place, it will take at least 2-3 years to develop an infrastructure. So if we keep measuring a district on infrastructure every time, it will not change much. So we also had to focus on indicators that will change on a monthly basis. Otherwise, the whole objective will not be fulfilled.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm not really sure whether we have time for the other two questions. Megha's second part of the question will definitely be answered by in Dr. Bappa's session. And the other question of Adhyatam, also will to a large extent be answered by Dr. Bappa. So
Yes.
I think we can probably go on to the next session. Jyoti, Brigadier Kapoor, what do you think?
Yes, I think so. And
yes,
to all the
Dr.
participants, just hold your horses, please. Let Dr. Bappa's session get over, and we will then leave some considerable time for the questions. What do not get answered, we will get back to you through emails, etc., and satisfy you holistically. Don't get worried on that. We will stick to our time plan for the time being.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier Kapoor. And thank you so much, Dr. Sarkar, for the very, very insightful session. Now, the next session on data analysis for the social sector will be facilitated by Dr. Bappa Ditya Mukhopadhyay, who is a professor of analytics at Great Lakes, Gurgaon. Dr. Bappa will be sharing his insights on the topic, as well as give us an idea of the various analytic tools that are normally used and various aspects of data collection, management, analysis. Dr. Mukhopadhyay has been actively involved in doing research work pertaining to public policy, combining his expertise in data analytics with development economics. In fact, he was instrumental in designing the direct benefit transfer in lieu of the public distribution system for the NCT in 2011. He also developed the white paper to go cashless in 2010, assessed the impact of microfinance, etc. Currently, he's working in the area of sustainability, and he's developing some indices that are very novel and useful. He also serves as research advisor to various NGOs and think tanks like CUTS, IDF, Development Alternatives, WWF, PEH, WHAT, etc. Over to you, Dr. Bappa.
Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya, and thank you, Dr. Sarkar. I hope I'm visible as well as audible. Okay. I'll just share my screen, and I have a very what I consider is a very small presentation, and I hope that is fine. Okay, so can Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the opening slide? Data
Can see,
analysis
we
for,
can
yeah,
see.
yeah.
Yes.
So let me kind of keep it as precise and concise as possible, because my objective is to just take you through a little bit of when we are using data for a social impact case or a social impact study. What are the things which we need to do? I mean, a bit of why and what are the things which we need to do? And as Dr. Bhattacharya said, that I'll also try to round it up by looking at, I'll round it up by a program which we have in mind. How does that program work? So here is an issue, that why do I want to do a quantitative approach? So uh, for NGOs, for social impact, why do we need to do that? Okay, so so the main reason why we want to do that, and why it is particularly important for people like you, people who actually are working on the ground, is essentially you are trying to do something extremely important, which functioning systems, government systems are unable to do, which is cover the last mile. Okay, so the feedback from the last mile, what works, what doesn't work, people on the ground can do it best. So there are more matured economies, more matured democracies, where at an institutional level, whatever we try to do percolates down to the mass, and we don't have to worry. For example, if you're looking at EU, just a 1% increase in education budget a year would take care of mostly the educational shortfall. But when I look at India, a 1% increase in the educational budget might not lead to much of an outcome, unless we see that how exactly that increase in budget is covering the last mile. And that is normally done by people like you, the NGO that are trying to ensure that every money that has been there actually uh, is done well, is kind of managed well, and it gives the right kind of returns. So essentially, if we're looking at why we need a quantitative approach, is basically the impact of what we are doing, to figure out what works, to figure out what doesn't work. Okay, and also to what extent is something whichever is working that is working, and what do we need to tweak so that we can scale it up. That's the important thing. Okay, so to give a very small example, so that which I was partly involved in, that one of the things India does definitely take pride in, and rightfully so, is that we have been doing very well in terms of trying to do conservation of animal species, mainly the tigers. Now, there are multiple reasons why the tiger, Project Tiger, or the tiger population is increasing. And some people say it's because the parks are managed better in terms of we have stopped poaching. Some people say, the tiger populations are increasing because the prey base is good. Some people say it is increasing because we have managed to reduce the human wildlife conflict. Some people say we are doing it better because the tigers are being born healthy. So there are so many reasons which were given, but it is very important to figure out that which among them are actually the true ones. How do I rank order them? And so that if I have a limited amount of budget, which of those 4 or 5 items should be changed, and which can we say that we don't have any evidence. Okay, we don't have any evidence that tourism increases the number of tigers in a park, or we don't have any evidence that reducing human wildlife conflict actually improves the tiger population in a park. Therefore, we may not want to think about that. Essentially, the important thing what data allows us to do is basically answer this kind of question, that what is the impact of whatever we are doing on the ground. There are many things which we are trying to do, which is working, which is not working, and whatever is working, it is working up to what extent. Then what we need to tweak a little bit, and then how do we scale it up, that whatever I'm doing in a small district or a sub district or in a small muhalla area of a particular city or a town, how do we ensure that this can be a pan India thing? That's the idea behind doing data. Okay, because the data is a language which allows people to objectively evaluate various hypotheses, various statements, find out which is working, not working, and then kind of scale it. That's the idea. Now, to do that, what I will do is I'll just go through a very, a case study which development alternatives was involved in. So here is a little bit of a description of the case study. And that is basically they were trying to do a do a skilling program case study where the locations were Rajasthan and Delhi NCR, Jaipur and Noida. It was between 2018 to 2025. It's actually ongoing, and the whole idea was that in India we have a large percentage of Indian workforce is in the informal sector. So even if they have a way of earning, that earning is not steady. So some people do go to school, they do finish the school. Many of them are school dropouts, but by and large, there is an agreement that perhaps the training in the school is not always utilized well by the students, or is not adequate enough for the students to have a meaningful engagement, meaningful employment. And so therefore, DA wanted to look at something which can be used for nationwide upskilling. So they identified, young people from these centers, and designed a training program. The training program would be or very skill driven. It's not an academic program that I generally you learn certain things and you go and try it out. So the training program was kind of has an internship. I tried up with industries and doing specific skill, including kind of helping them how to be how to do the self-employment. Okay, so how to generate self-employment, how to kind of be a successful agent in a microfinance institution. So that's the kind of thing which they had done. Um, the issue, the case study which we want to study is that now that they have done it, they have worked with people, and we have data. Um, what are some of the things, if we want to look at this case study, what are some of the things we need to answer? What are the interesting questions we can answer from there? So when we look at this, obviously the first thing which we need is have a look at the data. And although the data is huge, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a very simple snapshot of the data, right? Uh, Let me kind of, okay. And I will just try to show the snapshot of the data and just tell me whether you can, whether the data can be seen or not. Okay. Just this. Okay, so I hope you can see the Excel file of the data.
Yes,
Can
it's
Yeah, you
different.
can, right? Okay, so there were many columns. So there were what we typically the data which we call, there are many features, but I'm just presenting some of the features, right? And which we should be able to generate and ask some interesting questions. So the total number of respondents or total number of beneficiaries of this particular program was more than 5,000, but I'm looking at only a handful. So the data had center location, either Jaipur or Noida. The duration in terms of, there were various programs, okay, and so duration in terms of days, age of the participant, the gender, the marital status. Now you may ask that why do you need a marital status? And that's an integral part of doing a data analysis, that a priori we may not have a good idea to figure out whether a variable or a feature is important or not, but data analysis actually tells us whether a feature is important or not. This is category, whether it's a quote unquote general category, OBC or SC or ST. Educational qualification, did that person complete the training? Because many of them does not complete the training, either they drop out, or they join somewhere else, or they did not pass. This is the pre-assessment, that when they got into the training, what was the grade like? The post-assessment, then we have a variable which is like kind of whether a candidate is placed, yes or no, and let's say the monthly earnings. So when the person got the job, what was the monthly monthly job when that person kind of started. So that's pretty much the data. Now the question which we want to look at is what kind of things or insights can this data basically tell us? So let's kind of start with that. Okay. So what kind of skills can things like this tell us? Okay. So what are some of the questions, right? So I just want to kind of take couple of minutes to kind of look at the look at the questions, and then maybe spend a little bit of time that if these are some of the questions which we find are interesting. I'm certainly these are not the entire gamut of questions. If these are some of the questions which we find interesting, how do we go about answering them? So one sort of questions which I thought is that, suppose there is a lady, let's say we call her Sheila, right? And when I'm looking at Sheila, I'm looking at Sheila as a female, is in a particular age group, might have finished a school or might be married, etc., so on and so forth. One of the questions I want to ask is, after doing this program, will Sheila get placed? That I think is an important question to ask. Similarly, if there is a guy who is Mohan and who is similar to Sheila in some area, cases, but not similar in every aspect, will Mohan get praised? So, okay, so this typical. I mean, data analysis is trying to answer this question. Okay, will Sheila get praised? Will Mohan get praised? And then what can Sheila expect as a starting monthly salary? Because if somebody wants to invest their time and effort in this particular program, she also wants to know what is the return. The same question goes for Mohan, right? Um, Again, as I'm saying, these are some of the indicative questions which data analysis helps you answer, but it is not just limited to this. We and after that we have a very important question that, okay, suppose I say, well, will Sheila get placed? I say, okay, the chances of Sheila getting placed is going to be, let's say 50%, and chances of Mohan get placed is, let's say 30%. That's fair enough. That's answer to the question number 1 and 2. But immediately, I think the next thing to be asked is, what must Sheila and Mohan do so that the 50% for Sheila goes up to 70%, and for Mohan, the 15% goes up to 30%, okay, or 50% goes up to 60%. What must they do so that the salary also increases by 1,000? Because these are some of the very, very important questions. And if you can answer, or if we can answer a question from this particular program, we can automatically see that interventions program like this will be very effective, not only to the participants, they will join it, but even to the industries or to the government, who will realize that this is the usefulness of the program, where they're taking up individuals who had a low chance of getting placed, but post completion of the program, the chances of getting a job or earning some income, increases many times, right? So having done that, how do we do the analysis? So we have the data. The first, there are two important. I mean, that's how we start breaking it up. There are two important things. What are the chances of somebody getting placed, and what is their salary, right? So therefore, the starting point for this kind of data analysis is that just look at the data. Don't do anything statistical fancy. Just count number of people who got placed, number of people who did not get placed, no, and number of people who actually self-employed. That gives you a good idea that this program by and large has been reasonably looks at effective, because I think half of the people got placed after this program, and even some people were self-employed, and I would roughly say about maybe less than 40% people after completing the program did not get placed. So overall the program looks good, but again, as an NGO, you would be interested that how do I ensure that the no's are converted to yes next time. Okay. We also look at what is the distribution of monthly earnings. And we find that most people earn somewhere between, let's say, 9,000 to 10,000. Some people do earn very less. Some people do earn very huge. So I can roughly say that this is where the peak earning is, or the average earning is. So that's a way to kind of communicate the whole thing. So that's again a visualization and telling the story of the data. Now we want to figure out, for Sheila and Mohan, how does it work? So I also want to figure out in my data that, what kind of people are there in terms of age. Are young people getting jobs? Are old people getting jobs? So this is the distribution of the age. We then look at gender, that in my data, what percentage of them are male and what percentage of them are female. So we find that roughly about maybe 55% of them are male and about 45% of them are female. we look at the placement status, because if we want to find out whether Sheila is going to get placed or not, we look at for female, okay, um, the yes and the self are probably the more dominating than the the no, and for the male there are very few, let's say, self. So for female, the selves are self employment is a huge portion. So all these insights we get from the data, which helps us kind of answer these kind of questions. We look at the education level. Again, for the education level also, we find for the graduates, people who are graduate has slightly higher percentage of getting placed. Postgraduates have higher percent. Even 12, they also have a higher percentage of getting placed. But I think the issue is that for people who are not kind of have not passed class 12, they might be the ones who are struggling to kind of getting praise from this program. All of them are giving me an idea that when we have a program like this, how do I look at the effectiveness? So that's the first part, which doesn't require a very fancy statistics, just a visualization, and that's often good enough, right? And I think that's what Dr. Sarkar was saying, that many times just a simple count, simple visualization kind of does it does it very well. Okay. Then once we start putting all of that, then we say, okay, I can say that females have a higher percentage of getting praised than male, graduates have a higher percentage than that. I have a lots of individual questions. But when I'm looking at Sheila, Sheila is, his age is 24 years, let's say. She's a graduate, she's social status is general, let's say she's yet to be married. But what is the chance of, will she get placed, right? And what we learn in data analytics is develop a model which gives some weights. Okay, it gives a weight of 0.1 to 12% to being a gender, gives a 2% weight to age, and we learn how to develop this weight so that for Sheila we plug in the relevant values and we come up with the answer. And the answer to this question is about 70%. So for Sheila, it's 70% chance that Sheila will get placed. Why? Because of a model like this. Okay, there will be a model like this which will work, which will give different weights. And based on those weights, we will be able to give it for Sheila. We'll also able to give the same thing for Mohan. Okay, and Mohan is a person who is 20 years old, let's say, who did not finish class 12, social status is ST, marital status is married, and let's say for Mohan, uh, this model do not change. The model is the same, but for Mohan, maybe the placement based on his values, the chances of getting placed is 30%. So what does it say? It says that females in this program of a particular profile has a 65%, 67% chance of finding a getting placed, whereas males of a particular profile will have a lower probability, and that should help us to figure out therefore what must be done. Maybe you do well in the course, maybe you attend it attend it well, so you will be able to figure out for in the program what things can you work upon and what things you cannot work upon. Therefore, you will get an idea about how effectiveness is this program going to be. Okay. Uh, when we develop, we also need to find out, how accurate the model is. And this is all part of doing modeling. So essentially what we will try to do is we will develop a model which will have two parts, that people who are actually placed and people who are actually not placed. And we would find that, by and large, among, let's say, 219 people who actually did not get placed, my model will correctly pick up over 179 of them. And among, let's say, about 207 people who actually did get placed, our model picked up 192 correctly out of them. So, it managed to pick up that, these people, so 192 out of 207 people have correctly picked up, 179 out of 219 have correctly picked up, and overall my model is 87%. So basically, for about every 100 people who took the program, and whatever happened to them after finishing the program, I got it right. 87% of them I could correctly predict that their outcome, and 13% I could not. So maybe I'll have to work better. But as you can see, this is a tremendously powerful way to kind of convince to the outside world that how the power of data analysis. Okay. Um, again, we develop models which are, let's say, looking at the salary. And let's say for salary for Sheila, again, we develop a model. And that model which we developed on the data was came to something like a 9,000. So Sheila would get approximately something like a 9,000. We can do the same thing for Mohan. And that's what part of data analysis.
Sorry
Now,
to
just
interrupt,
to wrap
Papa.
it up,
So,
just
yeah,
to,
we just
just
have
to
to.
wrap it up. So therefore, whatever we have been discussing, that how do we put together, right? So if we are the program which we are planning, or so what are the things which we should do? So we should start with structured and unstructured data, because Dr. Sarkar was talking about the satellite image and all, and the data which I used is a very structured data. So we will probably have discussion on that. We will be doing basic statistics, because as you saw, that a lot of the things can be done with basic statistics and visualization. We should be talking about pattern recognition, that how many types of students are there. And then the last two things are understand and influence outcomes. Okay, I mean, what are the outcomes? People getting placed or not? What are the outcomes? What kind of salary do people have? And then also influence that, how do we improve the probability of getting placed? And finally, all of this will be done with the context of measuring the impact, measuring the impact of whatever intervention you are doing. So that's the idea, that so that that intervention impact of the interventions can be measured. So that's the kind of thing which we are putting together. I think I'll just stop here, and if there are some questions, I'll happy to kind of take those questions, and I'll do stop share also.
Papa, would you also like to say a few words about how we are planning to structure the MDP?
Yeah, so as I
Overall
said that
format.
the last slide was the rough things which we'll cover. So the MDP will have some idea about how to design an impact. Then how does one collect the data? Now there are two ways of collecting data. One is you do a survey and you collect the data, and the other is there is also a lot of other data which you don't have to go and do a survey and collect, but you just extract, like satellite image. Then we go to the next phase where we do the basic analysis, where we are trying to define the objectives, that what is the objective of the intervention which you are doing, how do we design the impact, and then how do we statistically measure it. So we'll be doing some tools. Now some of you might be worried that my statistics is not good, will I be able to do that? We are going to heavily rely on GNAI. Okay, so in fact, the reason why we could not do it 1 year back, 2 years back, because that would require people to do coding. But today I can confidently say that we don't have to do coding, right? We just need to be able to ask the right question in chat GPT. And that's what we were going to do. We are going to look at a problem, and what we'll try to do is, what is the right prompt you should be doing in chat GPT to be able to get the answer. So the main thing which you pick up is, what is the right question to ask, and then how do I ask the right question in chat GPT to analyze the data and interpret the answer. So I don't think requirement of statistics is an important thing, and we are going to utilize let's say GenAI
Right. So
extensively.
it will be what, a 3-day program, residential? What will it be like? Yeah.
That is something.
I think Jyoti has a poll, so probably we can ask some questions and ask participants to answer. And plus, Jyoti, I thought you had some video, right? Which can
Yeah.
run to show how data is actually being used on the ground. Would you like to run that?
Yeah, I would like to run that
Jyoti,
before.
yeah, before you do that, can I just take a minute, please, because it will address some of the questions that were raised.
Yeah.
So I just take precisely 1 minute in answering some of the questions. I think Miss Megha, wherever in the world she's attending from, Lakshit Bhatia and another lady, you had some very pertinent point that we are small NGOs and in the development sector. How will this particular course help us solve Kedarnath type problems? How will we collect data which would be valid? How do we know whether it is cogent, whether it is reliable? So I want to say a few things. Firstly, for smaller NGOs, you've got the dashboards. You had the Dr. Sarkar tell you from Niti Aayog that every ministry has dashboards today, which realistically are telling you in the last 24 hours what is happening. So the data sets are available, but it is experts like Dr. Bapa who in the 3-day program will teach you on how to create models around this particular data to draw inferences. And remember today, if you are an NGO, you do not have the wherewithal, but your project writing for proposals, you will solicit your CSR funds only if there is credible hypothesis. And this credible hypothesis will either be proven or dispelled by use of this data. Whether it is funding, whether it is ESG. And remember, today, no matter what you do, from intervention to your feedstock to your logistic chain, everything has a carbon footprint. Today, you're going to end up in carbon credit. You're earning for yourself carbon credits. That's going to be the new currency for tomorrow. So you better be compliant through the use of data. Also, your credibility, evidence-based, is based on benchmarking which data provides you. Thereafter, what the outcomes impact, and then you will become change makers. So whether it is specific intervention or generic, the data will tell you whether a state like Rajasthan, whether it is going in for wind surfing, harnessing the wind energy because of its plateaus and because of the land that is available, or whether it is for low agricultural aspects. Are you into food processing or food producing? So data gives you all of that. As far as Ms. Megha's question about how will data help you in the Kedarnath type thing, please take your mind back to 1999. Odisha had a massive super cyclone where 10,000 lives were lost. 2 years back, the same cyclone hit the coast of Odisha, not a single casualty. You had data through NDMA, SDMA, where predictive analytics and forewarning was done. There was preemption. People were moved. They calculated how much time is it going to take. So this is what happened. And over to you, Jyoti. There are many things to be answered, but I suppose we'll reserve it for that 3-day course when they attend that particular session. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier Kapoor. Just adding to what you said, answering to Adyatam, he asked that how small organizations with limited resources can ensure the data is valid and reliable. Dr. Bappa had answered this question while talking that we just need certain prompts while using AI. So it's not very complex. It's easy. That's what we will decode in this course. Launching the polls. My first question is, what is your preferable mode of undertaking the learning program? Is it offline, online, or hybrid? You will see the questions. And I request you to answer. So I see the competition is between offline and hybrid. 67%, okay. So hybrid is clearly moving ahead.
Jyoti, just give them some time because it takes for them to press their buttons and for it to come. Just 10 seconds, 20 seconds
So, yeah,
before we
exactly.
move on to the next.
For
Nelson, you
offline,
have your-
yes. I'll just add offline course might also give you a good opportunity to network, and hybrid, of course, does the same. So I'll move to next question. Okay, I'm waiting. People are still answering.
I think you may move because you have the next set of questions.
Yes, move to the next question. Next question, would you able to attend a residential course? Options you see on your screen. Yes, no, and maybe. Are the options visible?
So you might want to end the first poll and then launch the second one.
Okay.
Yes,
Are the
no,
options
okay.
visible?
Yes, as well.
Yes, now they will.
Yeah. Would you be able to attend a residential course in Delhi NCR? Yes, no, maybe. Interestingly, 60% people say yes. The options are being updated.
Yeah, I think you can
I
move
think
on to the
that's,
next.
yeah, I'll move to this next question. Are you willing to undertake a learning program? That was the first question, actually. Yes, no, I want to nominate a team member. These are the three options. Yes, I want to undertake. No, I don't want. I'm not interested. I want to nominate a team member.
Actually, thank you very much for this particular question because it vindicates our stand, really, and for the experts that have put it in perspective, that really answers the quality time spent in the last 1.5 hours in curating this for you all.
People are still answering. I'll just wait for a few seconds more. Encouraging response on the affirmative front.
Yeah, I think you can move on now.
I'll just share the results. Okay. Fine. I'll just close the poll. I request the backend team to share the video. So definitely the poll answers that this course is important. People are looking forward to gain knowledge on maximizing social impact with data. And interestingly, there are points that people want to attend in hybrid mode and looking forward to be there physically as well. So this video, which is going to be put up, I request the backend team to put up the video.
Yes, it's just putting it up.
Yes.
They like to tell them in the meantime that these are from actual ground
Social
managers who
development
use
is an
data.
extremely complex process.
Just hold.
As social scientists, we and our teams work at the intersections of people,
Hira, please pause.
planet, and profits.
Hira, please pause. Yeah. So these are the actual program managers and the development practitioners, colleagues who work in the field in different thematic areas, contributing to social impact. How on day-to-day basis they monitor, they evaluate, they use data, and they analyze their progress is what is going to be talked about in this video. And people from the same sector would definitely relate to it. Hira, please begin from the beginning.
Social development is an extremely complex process. As social scientists, we and our teams work at the intersections of people, planet, and profits. We just don't design solutions. We delve deeper and understand the nitty-gritties involved. Let's hear from different teams how they have been dealing with data and how it has been impacting their decisions for the social development projects.
Every month, hundreds of students join our skill development training, and our engagement with them doesn't stop with the course ends. We analyze progression, identify the factors that are important to be communicated to the employers. This helps us to tailor our job readiness modules so that our students are truly market ready, both technically and socially.
We facilitate the journey of local entrepreneurs and help strengthen the ecosystem they operate in. Our team helps tracking the technology, finance, raw material and procurement at both individual and the ecosystem level and help strengthening the same. We serve the entrepreneurs directly but also help for decoding the systemic patterns which aims at reducing the cost per enterprise. Overall, it aligns with the local socio-cultural context which add an additional complex layer to our work.
DA has done a lot of work in managing city level waste. DA now, over the past 2 to 3 years, have also started by strengthening decentralized waste value chains, specially designed for rural, urban, and peri-urban settings. In this whole process, data management, data capturing is an important thing. In data capturing, data is being captured at each and every step of the value chain. So all the data is managed on a daily basis, and all the data is being verified by the community and by the local panchayats.
The hyperlocal air pollution and GHG emission project has been rolled out. The objective of this study is to generate hyperlocal data sets and using data science to develop use cases that can then inform the local authorities to take appropriate action to contain air pollution and GHG emissions in the cities.
Our work primarily involves policy analysis and secondary data augmentation. We collect evidence, identify patterns, and develop recommendations based on rigorous analysis. As we adopt new tools and analytical techniques, our ability to extract insights are becoming strong, improving the accuracy and the impact of our research. We also do policy research and we gather evidence, and we also, based on our gathered evidence and fact-based research, do the recommendations that are actionable, grounded, and effective.
Thank you so much. Now that this extremely valuable session with wonderful insights is coming to an end, I would like to thank my panelists, Brigadier Kapoor for building the context right, Dr. Avik Sarkar so simply explained the complex data analysis and its importance in the development sector, and Professor Bapaditya, how interestingly you explained us the modeling, how these modelings can be predictive and convey our social impact to build a future path for the future projects which we are going to envision and work with in different stakeholders in collaborative manner. Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya, for being a wonderful co-host. You have been extremely easily gliding through us the sessions and conducting it coherently. Thank you, our backend teams, for supporting us in presenting this webinar. And thank you to all the audience for attending and taking out your valuable time. You all will be getting a link on certain questions we would want to understand to serve you better through this learning program. Thank you so much for this wonderful effort.
And watch out for the space on social media from Development Alternatives, Tara and Great Lakes for the exact dates and modules of the Management Development Program actual. We hope to see you there. We hope to shake you by your hand and change the entire system. Imagine a HEI and a civil society organization coming together, two colossals in their respective fields, coming together to create change and impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Looking forward for this collaborative action. Thank you so much.